Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Amy McGuffin. I'm the President and CEO of Kittitas County Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters and the Chamber, we're grateful that you've come here tonight. We're also grateful for the City of Ellensburg Library and Hal Holmes for hosting this tonight for us. We are just so excited to see how many people have joined us tonight. We're going to start the evening by doing an introduction of Corey Wright, County Commissioner, District 1.
Sorry. Thank you, everybody. My name is Corey Wright. I appreciate that, Amy. I would be up here this year. My term ends in 2024. I am up for election right now. I'm unopposed. So sadly, well, positively for me, it gives me some more time this year, but sadly, these positions need to be challenged, I believe, every time. The voters need to give a referendum on the performance of those who serve them. So while I do appreciate the time, I am disappointed that I won't be getting that, but I appreciate all of you taking the time here tonight to spend your evening learning about those who have been asked, who are asking you to support them. One of the people that I actually do want to point out that isn't here tonight, but is in town, and this is not an endorsement, it's really more of a report, but Raul Garcia, for those of you who may know him, he is an ER doctor in Yakima. He's also running for the Senate seat, currently held by Senator Cantwell. I saw him today. We have nice air conditioning in here right now. He walked yesterday from Toppenish to Yakima, and today I saw him on Canyon Road walking. He had walked from Yakima to Ellensburg. He's going to the KOA, and he's planning on walking all the way to Seattle. He is not wearing anything that says Raul Garcia. All it says, he's wearing a shirt that says freedom from fentanyl. This is a near and dear issue to him, and it's really not about the people, it's about the issues. So I urge all of you to hear what the candidates have to say about the issues near and dear to you, and those who, as Raul is doing, walk the talk, deserve your support. So thank you again tonight for spending your time. Amy, Steve?
Thank you, sir. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve DuPont. Lived in this community for over 20 years, and I've been asked to moderate tonight for our three candidates for Superior Court Judge. Before we get started, just a few ground rules for everybody. Just so you know, the way we're going to order this is for the very first question, we'll go in alphabetical order, left to right, and then after that, the directions say go back and forth, but I'm going to change it. We're going to then go Mr. Herion, and then Mr. Mills, and then revert back around. Otherwise, you'd be answering twice, number two every time. The timer is down here. You'll have 90 seconds for the opening question, which is, basically why you're running and so forth. And then it'll be 60 seconds after that. So after I ask the question, please pay attention down there at the timer table. I don't think I need to go into the nitty-gritty details, but we're not going to be disruptive. We're not going to be attacking each other. No personal attacks, no disruptive behavior. I just figured you don't even need to know that. For the audience, we're going to have a strict rule on applause and reactions. So you'll be able to cheer here in a moment before we get started and at the end, but please don't be clapping for people's individual answers and so forth. And if you have a cell phone on you, there's a reminder to turn it off or turn at least the sound off for our forum. Okay. Any questions, or shall we begin?
We can begin.
Okay. So the old opening question is, please introduce yourself, explain why you're running for office, and what you'd like to accomplish in the first year.
I am Margie Alumbaugh, and I was born and raised in Kittitas County. I was born here in Kittitas Valley Community Hospital. I went to Lincoln, Morgan, Ellensburg High School, and then Central Washington University, where I got my BA in paralegal pre-law studies. During my senior year, I got a position with the Volunteer Legal Services and did that. That's where I learned to do some family law stuff, no contact orders, etc. And I became more in love with the law and the justice system and helping people. And so when I gained employment at the Kittitas County Prosecutor's Office while employed as a legal secretary, I completed the law clerk program and became a lawyer. After I became a lawyer, I practiced as a deputy prosecuting attorney for both lower and upper district courts. Upper district court, as you know, is in Cle Elum. I practiced also in, I also opened my practice in 2015 after we were, I decided to open my practice because there wasn't really room to grow as far as becoming a felony prosecutor. So I opened my practice in 2015, primarily doing criminal law. I have done some civil law, some family law, tickets, those sorts of matters. I believe in fairness, equality, and preparedness, and ability to listen and gather information, and treating people with respect and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
My name's Chris Herion. 3 weeks from today, you will advance two of us to the general election. This has just gone out for the primary. Your Superior Court judge is your legal leader in the courtroom, who upholds the rule of law. Therefore, experience matters. For the last 23 and a half years, I have practiced law between the military and in the state of Washington. I've been licensed since November of 2000. I've been a criminal prosecutor. I've been a defense attorney. I've represented the indigent. I've represented persons who have mental health issues. I've been an adjunct professor, and I served as a judge pro tem in district court. I just concluded 8 years as your special assistant attorney general. Prior to that, for 7.5 years, I worked at Greg Zempel's office. He hired me graciously, thank you, to serve as your serious violent sexual assault, domestic violence prosecutor. I also did a little bit of coroner work until that position is taken. Currently, I am with the assigned counsel with the Office of Civil Legal Aid. I've served as a JAG officer in the United States Army Reserve since 2008. I'm a prior service Marine, and I raised my hand recently to pursue a master's degree in strategic studies at the United States Army War College. By way of community service, I'm on the Clymer Museum of Art, and the Ellensburg Music Festival is next week. I'm married, 23 years, 4 children, 3 are here, and that's the background experience I bring. Thank you.
Mr. Mills, when the clock starts, you may begin.
My name's Matt Mills. Figure out this clock. Anyway, I am a current prosecuting attorney with the Kittitas County Prosecutor's Office. I've been doing that for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was in private practice for 10 years. The reason I'm running for judge is I feel like I have the right experience. I've done a bit of everything that a Superior Court judge has under their jurisdiction. Obviously, I've been prosecuting crimes for the last 5 years, but I've wrote and probated wills, handled divorces and custody matters, litigated real estate disputes, business partnership disputes. I've worked with landlords and tenants, creditors, debtors, consumer protection cases. I've even done a personal injury case. Appeared in front of dozens of trial court judges in several counties in Washington and Oregon and across 3 federal districts. We have both of our Superior Court judges leaving in the fall, in the winter, and I think it's important we have someone that can hit the ground running, and I think that's something I can do. Second, I believe, and more importantly, I've been told by others, they believe that I have the right temperament to be a judge. A judge has to be dispassionate with evaluating the facts and laws, but be open-minded and have the ability to be patient and decisive when applying the laws. I've been endorsed by Craig Juris, who's a prosecutor, Ken Beckley, who is a defense attorney, and they came to that conclusion that I have the right temperament from 2 very different perspectives. So I'm flattered by that, and I think that's one of the reasons I would be a good judge, a good candidate for this position.
Thank you. And just to comment on the time, y'all are doing great so far, but when the thing runs out, you can finish your current sentence, but please don't. But you haven't broken even that rule I haven't said yet. All right, so first question, this one's for Mr. Herion. What specific experiences and qualifications make you the best candidate for this position? 60 seconds.
Specifically, I possess the combined experience of both my competitors here. And great colleagues, I enjoy them both. So my 23 and a half years, both in federal court, state court, detailed to courts martial, served overseas multiple times, and of course, I've also practiced here in Kittitas County since 2008. There isn't anything I haven't done in the courtroom in Superior Court where most of my experience has been, with the exception of construction defects. I did notice that Matt Mills has done a case involving construction defects. I have not done a case involving construction defects. Actually, I have not done a case involving personal injury, but everything else I have done. I currently lead a team of JAG officers out of Joint Base Lewis McChord and Fairchild Air Force Base, and I'm ready to lead in the courtroom because that's exactly what you should expect of your Superior Court judge. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mills.
And I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yes, sir. What specific experiences and qualifications make you the best candidate for this position?
Well, like I touched on in my previous answer, I've been around the block in the Superior Court. I've also, besides those experiences, I've also helped set up the behavioral health court in this county, which I think therapeutic courts are going to be something going forward that we need to look into more. We need to, I think we need a mental health court on the felony level in this county, in any county we can get. And that's one of the things that, I'm going to take that experience that when I worked with Judge Sander, Judge Ellis, and some of the other people in this room to get that going. I think that's taking that experience, moving it to the Superior Court level, moving forward is a specific thing that I've done that I think needs to be done in this county and that I'd like to really look into in the first year. I think the money's out there. That's going to be probably the hardest part, but we have the 1/10 of 1% mental health tax. I think we can get that going in Kittitas County and save us a lot of money and heartache in the future.
Thank you. And just a quick reminder, this is being recorded, so be sure to speak into your microphones as you answer. So, Ms. Alumbaugh?
Thank you. In addition to the experience, and I have already explained what my experience has been, I also believe that qualities matter, and as Mr. Mills indicated, temperament. I think fairness, equality, and the ability to listen and be open-minded and to treat people with respect are important qualities of a judge. And I don't think that this position is a critical position, and it shouldn't be considered a position of status or of power. It should be considered a position of for the people and being equal and fair to everyone. I think humanity matters, and I think that being able to treat people and listen to their problems and have the ability to gather all the information that's available by making sure that everything that's presented to you, you're careful, thoughtful, and making those decisions that affect people's lives. And I believe I possess those qualities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Third question's another open-ended one for you. We're going to start with Mr. Mills this time. What are the top 3 priorities or issues you will address if elected, and how do you plan to tackle them?
Well, as I touched on before, I think the number one issue is going to be the fact that we have a lot of institutional knowledge leaving the Superior Court. We have Judge Sparks, who's been there for over 20 years. We have Judge Hooper, who's been there for 8 years. And we're going to have no experienced judges. So first thing we need to do is, whoever's elected, is get back on board, figure out what we need to do to move forward. I think that's an opportunity as well as a problem, because I think there's some efficiencies that can be added into the Superior Court. electronic signings, things like that. That's going to take a lot of the first year, I think, for everyone to hit the ground running. Second, I touched on before, I think we need to start looking at expanding our therapeutic court. We have a really successful drug court in this county. I think we can expand that to a really successful felony level mental health court. Third is just going to be learning how to be a good judge. We have an entire system of appeals based on the theory that trial judges aren't always right. So we need to figure out how to be right.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh, your top 3 priorities and issues?
Thank you. I think that access to justice for folks is important. I believe that what I mean by that, it encompasses a little bit of a couple of things, like indigent clients, people that can't afford to get to court, they can't afford a lawyer. They are provided with counsel through the Office of Public Defense, but they also have trouble getting to court and those sorts of things. But I think that technology, which brings me to the next thing, technology in the courtroom is important, and we are getting there, but it could be better, and making that a priority, one of the priorities, is something that I would be looking into. I know that there are courts that have advanced a little bit more than our county has, but that's what I would be looking into and researching that and making sure that our technology is top-notch for the people. Also, equality and fairness, you know, there's still, unfortunately, a lot of discrimination and inequalities, and wrapping our heads around that in the justice system, but making sure that everyone, again, is treated equally. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Yeah, I don't have any top 3 priorities. What I have is a judicial philosophy. As the League of Women Voters asked, they asked, what type of judge do you aspire to be? Because that's who you're selecting. What type of judge you can get on the bench? You're not getting a legislator. If you want a legislator, you'll vote for a legislator, and they will provide you their priorities. My judicial philosophy is to fairly and impartially hear each case before the court, ensure orderly judicial proceedings, render reasoned rulings based upon objective rationale, and, to quote Thomas Jefferson, untethered to subjective experience, and be the guarantor that no person under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution is deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor denied the equal protection of laws therein. My philosophy is you follow those tenets, and everything else will follow. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next question, we're back to the top. Ms. Alumbaugh, you'll answer first. The question is, in your view, what are the pros and cons of moving to the bench versus continuing to practice law?
Pros and cons. Well, I think that the pros, I mean, I don't know what the pros and cons will be. I love being a lawyer. I love helping people. My daughter even wrote me a little post that says, "My mommy helps people." You know, in both aspects, I'm able to listen to folks, listen to their problems, try to help them in the best way that I can. I really can't think of a con necessarily, because I'm still going to be able to achieve the thing that I love to do, and that is to help people. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Herion?
The pro is you're the judge. The con is you're the judge. And it's heavy. It's a heavy weight. If this is a courtroom, you walk into the courtroom, and who do you look for? The judge. If you have a party, your focus is your party. You represent the state of Washington, you represent the state. You represent the accused, you represent the accused. And that is your focus. I will say the biggest challenge after 23 and a half years working in the courtrooms will be that the judge is not the advocate. The judge presides over the proceedings, essentially as the referee, and must render rulings, and there will be days when one party or another will be on the losing end. But if that judge truly is following those tenets that I laid out under the judicial philosophy, they will keep coming back. Because it's not a perfect system. It's the best system we got.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
Well, I think the biggest con, I'll start there, would be I think I'd miss working as a lawyer. I'd miss working as an advocate for clients. I know in private practice that was rewarding when you had a client and you could do something for them. And as a prosecutor, knowing that you're bringing justice to victims of crimes and holding criminals accountable has been rewarding. I think I will miss that. The pros is being the judge. I've not so much in the last 5 years in Kittitas County, but I've come across judges who I just didn't think were listening, didn't think understood, and I'd have the opportunity to be one of those judges who did listen and made reasoned decisions and made sure everyone felt heard and was heard and could explain their decision. And being the kind of judge that I've seen around, aspire to be that, probably be the most rewarding thing of being a judge, would be the biggest pro.
Thank you. Mr. Herion, how do you ensure the jury selection process remains fair and impartial?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is set out by court rule of law, the process itself. So the judge is not making it up as he or she goes. There is a script. In fact, I've talked to juries before and they said, gosh, the judge just seems to be reading from the book. Well, that's what the judge is going to do because the judge doesn't want error and doesn't want the case reversed. But I think perhaps what's most important is during that particular jury process is, number one, to ensure both sides have a fair, free opportunity to question the pool of jurors that comes in, just like in this room. We were going to select 12 people from you. We'll just hypothetically, each side would question. Each side would challenge for cause. Challenge for cause, say, Judge, I think this person should be removed. The judge needs to hear the rationale for it, unless they exercise what's called a peremptory challenge and ask that the person be struck. If there's not a valid reason for that, if that invited perhaps questions whether prejudice, then that would be something the judge would consider.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mills?
As Mr. Herion said, there's a lot of law around this, and it's not something that a trial court judge is going to have a lot of discretion over. Our pool is who our pool is. In Kittitas County, look around. We know who the pool is. Is there a way, maybe outreach, to try to get more people to register to vote to increase the jury pool? It's possible. But yeah, we have to make sure we're following the case law, the statutory law, make sure the lawyers are correctly or asking proper questions of voir dire, answering any, making sure we address any objections in voir dire being jury selection. It's the 25-cent lawyer word for jury selection process. But it's going to come down to listening to it, making sure we understand what the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court of both the state and the feds have said about what we need to do to make sure that the people who come in are adequately evaluated and both sides get to ask whatever questions they need to ask to make it fair.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Yes, thank you. That's a tough one to be the last one on. But at any rate, I'll echo what both my opponents have stated. In addition to that, I would just say, when the lawyers are questioning the jury pool and the questions or the answers are coming out, that, you explore some of those things maybe more during times that maybe there might be a hint of maybe some bias that may be hanging there instead of just moving on to another juror and asking more questions. Sometimes it does take a lot of time to select a jury, and I think that a lot of times it feels rushed, and sometimes we need to take more time with individual questions and go down that road a little bit further to make sure that the jury that ends up in the box is not biased and we have the most fair trial possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mills, tell us, how does a judge prepare for a trial?
Well, I've had some judges that don't prepare for trials at all. Fortunately, none around here. But I think as a judge, what I would do is make sure that if I've been briefed on the issues, read those briefs, read the cases cited in those briefs. Even if I haven't been briefed, have an understanding of what the case is about, make sure I'm up to speed on anything the appellate court's said since the last time I had, say I'm doing a personal injury trial, make sure I go back and what's the latest in the case law. But a lot of it's a lawyer's job, though, to make sure that the judge has the information that they need, and then it's the judge's job to make sure that they've reviewed that information and understand it.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Thank you. I believe that a judge needs to take in all the information that they've been provided. They need to be prepared. They need to be up to speed on the case law and the laws applicable to the facts and the precedent. They need to make a decision based on those facts and make sure that they're knowledgeable in their decision.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Yes. Well, it depends upon if it's a jury trial or a bench trial. However, under either circumstance, we'll take a crime. The judge will already know way before the trial that what the crime charged is, what motions have already been brought. The judge will have inevitably ruled on several motions, all the way up until the jury is seated and begins hearing the case. So I think what's instructive is that the judge look at the law, look at the case law, be well informed, know the script going into the trial, and preside over those proceedings.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Alumbaugh, I'm going to actually merge these next two questions together. How would you handle a situation in your courtroom where a party is poorly represented or a person is insisting on self-representation?
Well, if that happened in my courtroom, I would make sure that I would just keep asking questions of the party and the defendant, and I'm in this scenario, defendant, and try to explore with them what they actually wanted to do. And if counsel is poorly represented, I might see if they want a continuance and if they need to talk about this outside the courtroom or take a recess or come back at a later date, but I wouldn't force the issue.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Yeah, so for 3 years in Benton County, I served as a judge pro tem. We came here in 2008, my family and I. And I had an individual once who insisted, he was a constitutionalist, nothing wrong with being a constitutionalist, he insisted on representing himself. I recognized, number one, that he's at a disadvantage against a licensed attorney, particularly in that case, a prosecutor. Therefore, I think the first thing the judge must do is slow it down and recognize that that person is disadvantaged, and hopefully help them and encourage them to consider counsel. That individual is not willing, then perhaps side counsel, so standby counsel, where there's an attorney that's there, fortunately for the attorney, that is sitting through and hearing what this pro se representative is doing. If I'm unable to dissuade that pro se party from representing him or herself, then I would ascertain that they are knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily waiving their right to counsel, and remind them they'll be held to the same standard as the attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
I think the answer to that question, it also depends greatly on whether we're talking about a criminal trial where he has an appointed counsel, or are we talking about a family law trial where he's hired a lawyer who, in your opinion, just isn't doing a very good job. And there's issues of constitutional rights in a criminal trial. But it's also an adversarial system, so the judge has to walk a careful line to make sure that he's being fair to both sides and saying, hey, you don't have a very good attorney. You need to you need to reconsider. It might not be proper. As far as self-representative litigants, I've seen some do great jobs. I've seen some that are just a disaster. But to kind of echo Mr. Herion's answer, is there's a whole process for, especially in a criminal trial, for a colloquy a judge has to go through to make sure that this litigant knows what's going on. Do you know the rules of evidence? Can you read and write to start with? Do you know the rules of evidence? Do you understand what you're doing? Because you do have a constitutional right to represent yourself. It doesn't make it a good idea, but you do have that right. So a judge has to make sure that they're waiving it knowingly and voluntarily, but in the end, it's that person's decision if they're competent to make that decision.
Thank you. Mr. Herion, what criteria do you use in deciding whether to impose or affirm sentences outside the standard sentencing range?
Well, once again, it's set out by law. So and when I smile in saying that, you may see a running theme here, which is the judge follows the script. You're not electing a legislator here. We are to follow that script. And so if there are aggravating factors that are brought to the attention of the court, the prosecutor charges aggravating factors, and that's pled and proved to the jury, and the jury makes that finding, then the judge will have to consider that particular sentence. Now, if there is a range, then that's when, at the point of sentencing, when the judge will hear from all sides and make a determination what an appropriate sentence is within the range or outside the range after hearing from all sides, including if it's a criminal case, the victim in that matter.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
Mr. Herion is absolutely right. This is a legislative issue. The legislature is telling the judges, here's what we want the standard range to be. And this is something that's, a fairly recent development historically anyway. So I think a judge has to give great deference to that, great deference. I've been involved in cases where we've had upward departures or downward departures. Usually it's been agreed to with the defense counsel for one reason or another. It's part of a settlement or something like that. But there is a list in the statutes of what what a judge can consider to either raise the go above the standard range or below. It's things like number of crimes and whether the nature of the crimes, the sheer number of crimes in a particular event. But I think it's going to be a rare day where a judge goes outside that standard range, because we're supposed to uphold the law, and that's one of the laws is the standard range.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Yes, that's correct. The factors involved and the sentencing laws are going to dictate that, and the judge has to follow what the laws are and what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And so that's, again, as the prior response has indicated, that kind of is dictated by the laws.
Thank you. We have Mr. Mills, I believe, is going to answer this question first. How do you manage the caseload to ensure timely and efficient resolution of cases?
Well, that's part of the one of the things I think we can become more efficient on is case load management. And unfortunately, I don't know how much control a court's going to have over that. People are going to commit crimes, and those cases are going to be filed, or they're going to decide to get divorced. They're going to get in a car accident and have to sue somebody. So we're going to have cases. I don't know, we can't really control what comes in. but we can be efficient in how we manage them. And I think there's some inefficiencies that we've kind of gotten away with in this county because we're small, sometimes slow, but mostly small. Moving to, if you look at the lower district court and the upper district court, they churn through a lot of cases, but they also have a nice computer system. The judge enters the order right there. It shouldn't take too much time. If we can just cut down little bits of time here and there, it adds up, and we can maybe move more cases through. Encouraging settlements, as far as the judge can do that, maybe making standard mandatory settlement conferences as a local rule, which I've seen might help. But those are some ideas where to start.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am. How do you manage your caseload to ensure timely and efficient resolution of cases?
Was this mine?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, as far as a caseload, again, a judge needs to be prepared, and so in order to handle your caseload, you need to know what's available to you as far as the information goes, and depending on what kind of case it is, what cases you are handling, you're going to need to be prepared. If you need to come in on the weekends, if you need to stay late at night, you need to be able to prioritize your work, and you need to be able to be sure that you've read everything that you need to read, that you are up on the case law for those matters or those issues, and proceed accordingly. But you need to be able to definitely prioritize, and lawyers have to do that every day and make sure that they are up on what they need to be up on. If they need more time, if you have to stay late, if you have to come in on the weekends, then you're going to have to do that in order to stay up on your caseload.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Well, it starts when the judge takes the bench. It starts in the United States military when the commander walks into the room. I mean, that's what it is. You know the left and right limitations. Specific examples would be that, Your Honor, I'd like to bring something else up. Response: did you file a motion? Oh, no, I just thought I could bring it up. File your motion. That's a way to streamline and cut down the issues. A judge who at the end of a proceeding says, hey, is there anything else we should discuss? That's an extemporaneous remark on the record. Well, yes, Judge, actually there is something else. That is going to drag out the proceedings. So ensure that the motions are filed, which is good practice for the judge, because then that way the judge has the two motions, the supporting memorandums, looks at them and says, I reviewed your legal memorandums, and are we taking testimony? There's testimony. Here is my ruling. That's how you move cases through the system. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next question. All three of you have lots of experience in criminal law, but the Superior Court is a court of general jurisdiction where you'll be dealing with real property rights, domestic relations, estates, mental illness, juvenile, and civil cases. What experience do you have that outside of the criminal cases, and to appeal to one of our audience members, could you tell us which one of those areas you like the best? Ms. Alumbaugh, you're first.
Well, I mostly primarily have handled criminal law cases. I have handled other matters as well. I wouldn't say that I have a favorite or would rather, handle one case over another. I would just say that each case is interesting, and whatever don't have vast experience in, I can make up by learning, and I learn quickly. I can get up to speed on any type of case by reviewing the laws, the precedent, the information that's in front of me, and make an educated decision because I'm making sure that I'm educated and prepared for it.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Yes, I don't have any favorite case because my practice for 23.5 years has not been exclusive to criminal law. In fact, I'm probably the only candidate who the last 8 years has been principally practicing civil law by way of serving as your Special Assistant Attorney General, representing the Department of Children, Youth, and Family Services, unfortunately removing children from homes and processing those cases, determination of parental rights, adoptions, guardianship. Prior to that, I served as your prosecutor, deputy prosecutor on serious violent criminal cases, domestic violence, sexual assault cases. I served 2 years in Benton County as involuntary commitment public defense. So when persons are arrested and it's determined perhaps they have some mental issues, or not arrested, they're just wandering around the streets, I've represented those individuals. In the United States military, I have represented soldiers in administrative separation boards. I've advised commanders on contracts, on bases. I've advised commanders on appropriate targets and how to look at other countries' laws and regulations. I've also court-martialed soldiers, unfortunately, and had them removed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
So I've been a deputy prosecutor for 5 years. The 10 years before that, I didn't do I did some criminal defense, but not a whole, it wasn't the majority of my practice or anything. So actually, when I came to interview at Kittitas County for the prosecuting attorney, I kind of had to sell Mr. Zempel and Ms. Hammond on how my experience as a non-criminal attorney would translate into becoming a prosecutor. So like I've said before, I've kind of touched on everything that the Superior Court has jurisdiction over. As far as a favorite area of law, I think I have kind of a love-hate relationship with family law. It's been some of the most painful things I've experienced as a lawyer, and it's also been some of the most satisfying outcomes when you can help somebody come to some kind of resolution on how they're going to raise their kid, to not make them the victim of a divorce or something like that. But I've also had problems where, a man's beating on a woman and she needs to get divorced, and we have to get the man out of the house. And those are painful cases because it separates families, and not something I like to do, but in the end, it's something that has to be done.
Thank you. All right, next question. Mr. Herion, based on your past courtroom experience, what do you anticipate will be the most challenging aspect of being judge?
Just that it's a new role. I mean, I currently, why am I applying and asking for your vote? For 23 and a half years, I fulfilled pretty much every role in the courtroom with the exception of construction defects and personal injury cases. So I imagine there would be an adjustment period, and that adjustment period would be certainly talking to the judges, the outgoing judges. I've already talked to Judge Hooper, asked her some tips if I was elected. So there's a transitionary period. I can imagine for anyone coming into it, the first year or so, there'll be a learning period. And above all, I think what's important is throwing out, hey, I've been practicing 23 and a half years. Most importantly, there's no way you can know the entire breadth of the law. I mean, when I went to law school, maybe any of the attorneys out there, I thought, I'm going to learn the law. And in fact, no, you learn how to learn the law and where to go. The law is always changing, society's changing, and that will probably be the biggest challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
The biggest challenge will be moving from being an advocate to being a neutral. Kind of from the day you start law school, you're trained. This is an adversary system. We're going to train you how to figure out the law. We're going to train you how to advocate on behalf of your client. I don't think there's any law school courses that train you for becoming a judge. You're kind of putting the cart before the horse. So I think listening to the sides, not wanting to jump in with your own thoughts and arguments at the moment might be the toughest part, at least as we transition. Because it is something I love doing, but I also think that being a neutral, being a decision maker, being someone who can kind of have the final word until they get to the appeals court on what the law is and what justice is would be rewarding. But that's going to be a tough adjustment, probably.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Thank you. I think that also that the transition's going to be the hardest. Just be moving from having my law practice and then going into a position like this. It's a very, again, it's a very important position. I think that getting up to speed on all the areas of law and just being able to manage both of those things during the transition period will be the most difficult, but I know that I can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Mills, can you anticipate ever being faced by a dilemma, and could you walk us through what that situation might look like in your decision-making process?
Faced by a dilemma, yes, I think we all face dilemmas every day. I think lawyers face dilemmas, and I'm sure judges will face dilemmas. And I think maybe a good example of a dilemma is what we kind of touched on before. What if we have someone who is not being represented well, and you think it's going to cause a problem, you know, maybe a retrial down the road if the problem doesn't get fixed. As a lawyer, as a judge, I think you need to go to the rules, to the law, and figure out how can I navigate this without prejudicing the other side. It's a tough road, but I think there's enough case law, enough rules for judges that you have to figure it out, and that might mean, you know, calling up a more experienced judge in King County or Kittitas County or something like that to see how, you know, get their advice, get the advice of the appeals court and the Supreme Court. But that's the way you got to do it as a judge.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Yes, I think that if there's discrimination or unfair bias in the courtroom, that there would be, we would expect leadership from the bench and address it directly and respectfully and judiciously. We would need to set an example in the courtroom, and we cannot tolerate things that are, you know, that make the system look unfair. There has to be an appearance of fairness.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Yeah, I'll give you a concrete example. So in 2006, I represented a client. You can Google it. It's called Dollars for Deals. It came out of the Tri-Cities. And my client was on his third DUI. My client came to me and said, why can't you get me the deal that my previous attorney got me? Suffice it to say, he had made a payment to the city of Kennewick, a prosecutor there, and unfortunately, the money was taken, and he did get a deal through his attorney, through the prosecutor who were working through that. I was in a heck of a dilemma at that time because he wanted the deal from me. He wanted me to finesse the previous deal that he had got through the system at that time. He ultimately came out with it. We had to file some motions in an effort to have his case dismissed. It was probably the toughest case I ever had in my life because the attorney-client relationship is ironclad. So had he just said, I don't want to talk about it or what have you, I may have had to withdraw from the case. He ultimately came out and it was publicized and unfortunately for both the previous defense attorney and prosecutor, they ended up going to prison. But that was the toughest dilemma I've ever had in the case.
Thank you. I think Ms. Alumbaugh is answering this question first. What would your approach be to interacting with and managing the staff of the court?
Managing what?
The staff.
The staff. Well, I have experience having my own practice. I have a legal assistant, and I've had an attorney that was also a staff attorney. And so I would just make sure that they are treated with respect and dignity, just like everyone should be. And, you know, I'm not going to go in there and, you know, change everything. If there's a way that things are being done in the right way and it's effective and it works, then we're going to do that. I'm not there to boss anyone around. If the system inside the staffing of the court works, then that's what we're going to do. And if we can make things better, we'll make things better.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Yeah, I think anytime you go into a new position, the first thing you need to do is listen. Listen to what has been going on, and perhaps with the change in judge, or the change in a leadership, ask the individuals, the staff, what would you like to see changed? Because the staff is the working mechanism. It's like in the United States military, the non-commissioned officers. Those who are doing the work know what's going on, and they'll tell you. And then after you hear what they have to say, you make your proposals as to the direction you would like to take it. And I think that give and take process ultimately gets you to where you need to be.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
So in our county, the staff of the court right now is Ms. Sarah Keith and one other person who I don't know if they've hired yet. But Ms. Keith's going to be key to the new judges. She's going to be the one with the institutional memory in that office every day. So we're going to listen to her. But as far as managing staff, I've also had a law staff, small solo practice. I've had receptionists. I managed a pizza place in college. But my management philosophy has always been, hey, just tell me. I'm going to be open. I'm not going to be vindictive. I just want to hear what you think's going on. Let's talk about it. Let's get some ideas out there to fix whatever issues there might be. And I've tried to make myself approachable, even in a position that I'm in now, where I'm not technically a manager, but I have legal assistants that work with me, not for me. But they're that's kind of a quasi-manager position. Just tell me what's going on. Let's hear it. Let's be open with each other. I think that's the best way to manage staff.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to move on to the audience questions I have. I've got 4 of them. I'm not a lawyer or a judge, so I'm not 100% sure they're all relevant, but I'm going to ask them and you all can answer. I think we're on Mr. Herion starting first. What do you feel is the most important skill or attribute for a judge? And give us an example of a time when you demonstrated this.
What do I feel is the most important skill and attribute of a judge?
Yes, please.
I think it's more the gravitas the judge brings to the bench. So, you know left and right limitations when you meet somebody. And so how you speak, how you act, are you consistent? I think people will recognize very clearly if you're consistent, you work, if you're a judge, that you don't know what you're going to get when you go into the courtroom. And that can be frustrating. I think all of us as attorneys have had that where, gosh, I have no idea. When I think back on judges in this county, I think quite highly of Judge Mike Cooper. I never knew him personally until he left the bench. And I learned so much about him that I had no idea about, because he maintained a focus in the courtroom that I really respected. And I always felt there was a level of predictability in that courtroom. And that's probably the biggest thing that I would seek to offer, is predictability.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
So there has to be gravitas, but there also has to be some kind of approachability as a trial court judge. Where the trial court's, the first, most people only come across a trial court judge if they're getting a divorce or they have to contest a speeding ticket. Thank goodness we don't all need court. But I look at someone like Judge Sparks, who takes his job very seriously, but he doesn't take himself too seriously. He's a very approachable, affable guy. He's got that right temperament. I think that's something that I don't want to say mimic, but it'd be a good, maybe model myself after. You could tell he's listening. You can tell he's taking things seriously, but he's not afraid to add a little levity because people are nervous in court. The public's nervous in court. Why wouldn't they be? That's an important aspect, and I think that's something that I do in my day-to-day life as well.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Yes, I believe the most important skill or attribute is the ability to listen, to be fair, equal, and compassionate. I also believe that that goes towards the appearance of fairness and the ability to gain the trust of the community.
Thank you. Okay. I think Mr. Mills is answering this one first. What, if any, evidence exists as to racial inequality in the criminal justice system in Kittitas County? And if it exists, how would you work to solve it?
So, a bedrock foundation of our law, the bedrock ideal of our law is everyone's equal under the law, and I believe in that. You look at what Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equally. He wasn't the best exemplifier of that. He owned slaves, but that doesn't mean that he was wrong about that. I haven't seen racial inequality. I think we're very aware of our biases in the prosecutor's office. We work hard to examine those biases, make sure that they aren't coming through in charging decisions or how we offer pleas. Whether we're going to take a case to trial should have nothing to do with whether the person's black or white or Mexican. And I don't think it does, but I think we have to be on guard about that, and I think we have to be very careful, and I think this county's doing a fairly good job of making sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Yes, I believe that if and when there is racial inequality, we must treat it directly, and we must be fair and be careful when we are addressing it, and we need to set an example so that everyone knows that that sort of behavior is not going to be tolerated. But I think that, again, no matter what the issue is, even if it's something as serious as racial inequality and discrimination, that it does need to be addressed, and that it needs to be treated directly and fairly and with compassion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, take this for what it's worth, but starting when I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps all the way to present, I have never, not once, seen any level of discrimination. I have been around Marines who've had salty words and have been told you need to temper down, but I've never seen it. I think, and I'm glad for that. I think that it's important for the judge and all concerned not to make assumptions. Facts drive cases, and you follow the case as the facts come to be. And if the facts lead in that ugly direction, then it's addressed. But I think in picking up our phone and seeing what's out there, what's going on, I think there is a hyper level of vigilance, which is good. I think that's why you're hearing from all of us that the philosophy is everybody's equal under the law. There's no definition of who's who. Everybody is equal under the law, and that the most important point is that everybody is afforded due process of law.
Thank you. Ms. Ellenbaugh, how will the Supreme Court decision in Grants Pass v. Johnson affect your disposition to the unhoused in our community?
Well, I'm not going to speak on what a decision of the Supreme Court is, but just to say that I will follow the laws and what the precedent is. When there is precedent set by the Supreme Court, then we must follow it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
I'd echo that. You have to follow the law. You have to follow the case law. And we have nobody here has any idea what cases we'll get on whoever's selected on January 1. We'll get the cases that we get. And whatever the law and the case law is on that date, that's what needs to be followed.
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
So, I guess I shouldn't be afraid to say that I think that was a correct decision. However, I don't think necessarily, and this is, goes beyond what a judge has control over, rounding up homeless people and throwing them in jail just because it's constitutional, probably not the right answer. We need to have a legislature that looks for solutions. Why do we have a homeless problem? There's some things we can do is in the judicial system, but I think it's kind of limited once they're in front of you. We have, for instance, behavioral health corps, we help people get, connect with services to get housed if they're in that program because they have a mental health problem or a substance abuse problem. But it's fairly limited. So I think that's a problem for, just hate to punt it to the legislature again, to their part of government, but that's who has to make these policy decisions, and we have to follow them.
Thank you. Okay, final question before close. Do you believe that a judge of the Superior Court has the authority to compel state agencies to do their job? And if so, would you exercise such authority? Mr. Herion? I'm sorry, I forgot to designate the speaker.
Well, when I told you that in law school you don't learn about all the laws. I went to law school in Michigan, and so it was influenced by Michigan law. But, as my last day of law school, a Superior Court judge in Michigan said, it's about due process. You'll learn the law as it is in your jurisdiction. So to answer the question, the judge has to have authority. So a case has to be brought before the court. It has to be argued back to written motions. If somebody is asking for that type of order, does the judge even have the authority to do it from here in Kittitas County or not? And if the judge does the judge actually do it after hearing from each side?
Thank you. Mr. Mills?
So I think this comes up recently. We have, when we have someone who may not be competent, we do what's called a 1077 hearing. That's just refers to the RCW, the law that we're talking about. We have to have them evaluated at a state hospital, and we've had a lot of problems with that taking a very, very long time, a time that's outside of what the legislature says is proper. So we have had judges in this state, I don't know if it's happened here yet, but we have had judges in the state hold the department running those facilities, Eastern State and Western State Hospital, in contempt for not doing their job. So I do think that when it's set under the law, when a legislature says this department has to do this, yeah, that does give the judge authority to say, hey, department, do that, because that's what the legislature wants us to do.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Yes, the judge has to follow the laws and the precedent and act within the confines of their authority, and that is to be fair and treat everyone equally.
Thank you. Okay, 60 seconds for these. I think you all know what a closing statement is. So, Mr. Mills, you're first.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming out and listening to a bunch of lawyers who want to be judges talk at you. I noticed we have some people taking notes, and it's an important time here in the county with our two Superior Court judges leaving. We have this county is growing fast, and for better or worse, probably for worse, we don't have a lot of incumbents challenging here, so you may be stuck with whoever you elect for a while. So I'm glad you're here to listen to us. I hope you evaluate through the pamphlet, through the outside sources, and through what we said here today. I just want to say I'm proud to be endorsed by Judge Craig Jurist, the Upper District, and as of lunch today, the elected prosecutor Greg Zempel has endorsed me. I hope you take into consideration what they say. You can go to my website and take a look. Mr. Zempel's won't be up there quite yet, but and then some other citizens around like Ken Beckley and some other people I've known from Kittitas County. And thanks for your attention tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Alumbaugh?
Thank you. I would like to give back to the community I was born and raised in. I will serve with integrity, fairness, thoughtfulness, compassion, and respect for all. I will serve humbly and intently while treating all in front of me with absolute dignity and equity. The judicial position should not be held for status or power. It should be held to keep order, equity, and fairness intact. I am ambitious, thoughtful, and fair. I believe I will make an excellent contribution to our local society serving as a Superior Court judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herion?
Your Superior Court judge is central to the daily functioning of our court system. And I would submit that person should be the calm center of the storm. You can filter fact from fiction, and to be at his or her best when people are at their worst, to be able to make common sense judgments and not be swayed by passion or prejudice. If it's not clear, I'm a big fan of Thomas Jefferson, who stated, you must understand the law and facts drive every case, and it should be untethered to subjective experience. It's a tall order for you. So how do you choose? I would submit that the test of one's mettle is what he or she has done in life. And now you know. My name is Chris Herion, and the verdict is for you to render on August 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give our candidates a big round of applause.
Thank you again, candidates. We appreciate your time, and thank you for those that joined us tonight. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and the Kittitas County Chamber, we ask you to encourage your neighbors, your family, and friends that are able to be voters to go out and vote. It is an important piece of our civics, and we want to make sure that you know that you can put a sign in your yard to encourage people that come, and they are free. We have 2 styles today. We have Be a Voter, and then we have another one that I can't remember everything, but it says it in Washington State. It says, vote like democracy depends on it. It does. So you can come in the back room and take those signs, and please use them to your advantage. And again, join us tomorrow at the same time, 5:30, up at the Upper Kittitas County Senior Center. Thank you so much.